One of the times I fell in love with this man was when did you put your middle finger out? Or did you ask someone in the crowd?
I have a very good middle finger, so yeah.
So in the middle of his sermon, I think
It's also a way to weed out like very religious people.
putting your middle finger up and
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to pray us in?
I get nervous praying in front of people.
Is this thing recorded, by the way?
Yeah.
I love it.
We're recording right now.
Yes.
Oh no.
You want to pray us in?
Yeah, let's pray us in.
Let's go.
Jesus, I thank you so much for your spirit, Lord. And I pray, Lord, that this will actually go forth and impact people. I pray that just by watching them, there's be some sort of freedom in the spirit. And I thank you for this conversation. Let it be ratchet and righteous all at the same time. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen, God. Oh my gosh. All right.
Is it okay to pray to Jesus?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know what TikTok thinks, though.
TikTok has a lot of opinions.
Didn't the Lord say, pray to our Father?
Who art in heaven, hallowed be your name.
He did say, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And no one goes to the Father except by me.
We know who's the real Christian in this household. All right. We're back. We're in this thing. As commonly requested, you guys have been expecting this one for a long, long time. Guys, welcome to God Talks. We're here with
João
and
Mike Patz.
And you guys aren't ready for this episode. Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up?
How are we feeling today?
How are you feeling today?
How are you feeling today?
Okay, Pat. Oh my gosh. So usually when I start the podcast episodes, I have this little segment that's called God Talk segment. And like, we just say like, what is God talking to you about this today or this week or whatever. But I'm changing that literally just for this episode because I think the segment should be called Out of Pocket Question segment. If anybody here is watching from Greenhouse Church in Gainesville and you don't actually know Pastor Mike, this is who he is. So I'll start. So Pastor Mike, what does it feel like to almost get shot up a few months ago?
Let's go right there. Let's go there.
Just go for it, man. Because I want to hear about this too.
Yeah.
Maybe should give some context of. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. What is the context, and how do you know about that? What's up with that?
Well, you have announced it on stage that you get multiple death threats.
Yeah, this one was a little more. This wasn't a threat. This was more like, it was a threat, but it wasn't like an announced threat. I think the world's crazy right now. Like, that's what I think is going on. I think people have lost their marbles and never seen anything like it. You know, this in Spanish, like la mezcla, this mixture of all the everyone's got all these feelings and they're all banging together. So, yeah.
Did you ever, like, when you were a teenager, did you ever think, I'm going to be that
No.
I'm going to be that pastor that gets death threats?
No, I wasn't thinking of being a pastor. That's for sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought I would be an attorney.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I thought I'd be.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. You lay out cases really well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
So, João, why do you always put people on the spot with theological questions you know they can't answer?
Well, that's a great question. I like stirring the pot sometimes. I really love stirring the pot.
I want to hear an example of one of these questions.
Well, you got to give me an example.
Tell me one that he said.
I can literally give you an example. Asher, our camera guy right here, the first time you met him at Olive Garden, you just dropped the biggest bomb. What was the question, Asher?
I have no idea. I can't remember.
See?
What it was.
He couldn't even answer the question.
He couldn't even answer.
It was right in front of his dad. His dad had the highest hopes.
That's hilarious. No, I think you get to know somebody by the questions you ask. I think it's always fun. I don't do it because I'm expecting a deep answer. I think it's just really comedic. It's just super comedic. Yeah, it's super comedic, you know?
You do it to Justin Benjamin all the time.
Like if I meet someone for the first time, you know, people stay really surface level. Like, yeah, like, you know, tell me what you do for a living. I'm like, just tell me your deepest secrets. Let's go. Let's just get right into it right now. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have a question?
I do. João, what's your deepest secret?
My deepest secret is
The
that
camera just came on to him. I like that.
I don't even know what my deepest secret is. To me,
Actually, I'm
my
gonna put
life's
this-
like
I
an
need to
open.
record this while we're doing this.
My
for
life is like an
Instagram
open
page.
book. Okay, I do have a deep secret. My deep secret is that my wife plays video games till 1 a.m.
Wait, how is that? Why
How
did
is
you
that
just
your deep secret?
Because we're one.
Oh,
That's not
that's
how.
smooth right there.
So if Dara's watching this, the world knows she plays Fortnite till 1 a.m.
Dang, that's not how it works. But you did not have
That
to.
really isn't.
Listen, we like Christians are notorious for adding 2 people in one all the time. So that's me. That's my wife.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess our question segment is over. All right. Here's what we're doing today. So I wanted to talk to y'all about humility, meekness, and a spirit of excellence. And I think I'm going to get into this by telling y'all a show that I actually started watching the other day. It's a Korean drama. And
Game of Thrones. Yeah, I didn't realize it was Korean, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Far from Korean.
Far. So the show is called Celebrity, and it's about like celebrity culture in Korea and how people basically crush others to like make it to the top. And if somebody from the bottom even tries to come into like the social circle, they literally try to kill them. So they're trying to kill this girl who used to be rich, but now has been very, very humbled. She's living a very poor life, but everybody loves her. She makes this Instagram post and she's like, guys, I don't like likes. I don't like this society. She's basically trying to like deconstruct like celebrity culture. And one of the comments that pops up on her Instagram feed is, why would I volunteer to be a servant? No, thank you. Basically bashing her and stuff. So yeah, why would I volunteer to be a servant?
I think that's the question most people would state. I don't think it's a question. I think it's their statement. You know, why go be a servant?
Yeah. Well, it's not sexy. You know, like no one ever's like coming on the scene and be like, I'm going to serve you. And that's somehow sexy. It's not sexy at all. So I think that's primary reason people wouldn't want to do it in the first place. You also have to define like, what does it mean to be a servant? Does it mean to be okay with mistreatment? You know what I mean? Or does it mean to willfully put yourself second for the betterment of someone else? You know what I mean? You have to also define what you mean by that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Can you guys give us examples about that? Like, what are we talking about here?
Well, reversing it from the very highest level, obviously, our go-to everything is Jesus, you know, and Jesus says, I did not come to be served, but to serve. And so if he is the standard bearer as well as the cross bearer, you know, the guilt bearer, all these things, that's just a pretty stunning statement that the king, the guy that has all the swag, all the ability, all the authority, is the one who says, I come to serve. So if there's this contrast between the kingdom of Jesus and all the other kingdoms, his kingdom is one that runs on the king himself is the highest servant of all. It just kind of stands to reason. The world we're in, which is, you could argue is in battle with him. Like, he is the king of humility. He is the king of serving. He is the king of meekness. He's all of those. The enemy of that is going to be the opposite of all of that. And I think celebrity culture, I think, pulls that out. I think American culture, I think every culture probably pulls that out in some way. So taking it from there, you know, if he's the one, he's the example, the ruler, the redeemer, all of those things. And he is the most humble being in the universe. That's the irony of all the ironies, is that the most humble being in the universe is the greatest being in the universe.
And he did it willfully. You know what I mean? Like, he did it willfully. You know, we actually just did this on John 13. We talked about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. My favorite part of that passage is it literally says that, like, he knew the authority he had. And he got up, took off his robe, and served the feet. I mean, it's one thing knowing the authority you have and using it in your favor. It's another thing knowing the authority you have and using it for others. I think that's what, like, we see that in Jesus a lot. And if you're able to know what you have, yet still lay aside for the betterment of others, I think that's like true humility. I think that's where, because it's one thing. So it's one thing being subservient and not knowing any authority you have or not having any authority, but being placed there. That's not really humility. I mean, you've been placed there, right? But it's humility, knowing what you have, yet still willfully putting yourself second I think that's where true humility comes in.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like meekness too, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you have all the power, but you choose to not use it depending on your situation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. I love how you brought up John 13. I think the Lord has been giving me a word on John 13 also. So I'm going to get into that. And then I have another question because you brought it out, but I'm going to go into this one first. Let's see. Okay. So John 13, 2 through 17. It's right before the Passover, right? And they're all reclining at the table. And Jesus is like, okay, this is what I'm about to do. He takes off his garments and he girds a towel onto himself. And I looked up the definition of gird and a few things came up and I thought this was really, really good. So it means to encircle a person or a body part with a belt or band or to fasten something onto yourself. But it also means to prepare oneself for something difficult or challenging. So even in humility, like literally to do what he did, if I was put in that situation, that would be probably one of the most challenging things I've had to do ever. So anyways, if Jesus washed me, right? If he took off his garments, girded that towel around himself and washed me, who am I not to wash others? That's what I was thinking. And who am I not to serve others? Like literally, who am I? If I don't think I can do that, that means that I think I'm too high to like go down, but he did. So who am I not to have done that? But this is the word that he gave me. Like, this is really exciting. He laid aside his garments first. And I was reading it. I was seeing us, not just us, but like the people listening, taking off our garments, like our garments of pride, of self-indulgence, of like just self-exaltation. I see ourselves just like taking that off, our dignity, and girding ourselves with, I brought the towel. This is a towel from a service that you gave one time about humility. But I see ourselves taking off that dignity and girding ourselves with his towel, the towel of humility. And it has to be his towel, the towel of servanthood, because I find a lot of times that when I try to put on my own towel, it tends to come accompanied with my garments. I tend to try to use the towel of humility, but I'm still wearing my pride. I'm still wearing my self-righteousness, all this stuff. And so when I try to use this towel of humility and I'm serving my brethren, it's still all about me. I'm serving them, right? I'm serving you. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this with you. But the whole time in my mind, all I'm thinking is, what are the people outside thinking? Oh, she's such a great servant. Like, oh, she's doing this for her brethren, because I forgot to take off my garments.
This is actually a really great point. This is a really, really great point. To just try to throw on the garments of humility without first taking off the garments of whatever that self-exaltation, like you said, was. I think that's a great point. I don't think that fits on you and all the other clothing's on there. It's going to fall off.
Yeah. And that was the point. Like, you have to gird on the towel, but like the towel won't stay on if like all these garments are getting in the way. Like, that's the point of girding. It's like, this is not going to fall off, but like the garments get in the way. And so, yeah. And I catch myself in that a lot. If you don't take off the garments, you're walking in false humility.
I agree. I think it's a great thought. That's a really good thought.
So why is it so hard to take them off?
Becomes a part of you. See, the book of Hebrews says like to lay aside every way so he's only entangles you, right? So you could run this race of faith. I mean, when you've taken on so much, I mean, you wear this clothing, it becomes such a part of you, it becomes stuck to you. And that's why it's so hard sometimes. When you talk about pride, I mean, you're living your whole life with this thing. I mean, think about what our lives look like. We wake up in the morning, we get a dopamine hit from an Instagram post. We see the likes. That's the first thing we do. We scroll. It's all about us. What are they liking? A picture with my face on it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, let's just be real, right? We wake up in the morning, that's the first thing we see. I mean, everyone knows this, right? Like, you look at a picture, who's the first person you look at? It's you, right? We live literally our whole lives, us waking up in the morning. Let's use that as an illustration. Instead of you putting on your clothes, what are you doing? You're like putting on more pride. Our lives are filled with it. You look at any billboard right now, anything that you're seeing, anything that's sponsored on IG, it's all about something that's going to make your life better. You talked about Daniel 4. What did King Nebuchadnezzar say? Like, hey, like I have this high kingdom that he has done for me. He was literally praising the fact that the gods or God gave him all this stuff for me. Sometimes pride could look like praise.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
No. Say it again.
Like sometimes pride could look like praise because it's like, right? It's like, I mean, you talk about like serving a lot of people, but you talk about you still not removing the clothing that you wear. It's like, no, pride could look like praise sometimes because it's really praising God or everything that he's like doing for you, but really it's nothing for like the church. It's nothing for him. And that's why it's called signs. It's called signs and wonders. It's supposed to point to God. It's a sign pointing to something, not to you. So I would say it's hard because pride is literally a part of us sometimes, you know? So I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, pride could look like praise.
Okay. Yeah, my question that I had earlier, it kind of goes off of that, what you were saying, Pastor Mike. Why is it so... I wrote it down. This is a genuine question I have. Oh my goodness. I have to find it. Why is my default setting self-exaltation / people exalting me? Like I low-key crave that, but it's almost as if when I get it, I don't want it. I'm actually like, this is kind of like, I actually don't like this. But why does my flesh crave it, but I don't crave it? I don't know if that makes sense. Does it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think the world, I'm trying to think like the default setting. You're saying like the default setting. In general, like you're mentioning social media. I mean, everything is reinforcing this atmosphere, the air that we breathe, putting you at the center. You know, like one of those TV shows where the camera's following the person around, you know? I mean, every room I go into, I feel like the camera's following me, you know? Like when I walk into a room.
That's facts. Wait, that is facts.
Well, here I am. Like that, the main star is me. Like, hello, it is me.
You walk in church in a church service, you think all eyes are on you.
Yeah.
That's, right. You know what I mean?
Like, you're like, oh, if I sing, everyone's going to hear me. If I lift a hand, what's everyone going to think? Like, as if everyone is.
Walking down the supermarket, everyone's looking at you.
But we always think because from our vantage point, I mean, the only camera I have is my eyes, and these eyes are always seeing what these eyes are seeing. They're following me. So I feel like the main star, and Jesus is, I mean, it's stunning to me. The King of the universe comes to earth. I mean, one of the accusations against Christianity when I was at the University of Florida was, in some of my religion classes, if he was God in the flesh, or if he's all that, how do you explain the fact that he was like 30 years old and hardly anybody knows him? Like, how are you going to go all these years and you're just flying under the radar like that? No one wants to fly under the radar, you know, unless they're guilty and trying to get away with something, right? But like, if you've got it, you strut it, you know, like if you've got if you've got the assets, you're going to show off the assets. If you know what you're talking about, you're going to show your stuff. If you're in a room and you've got information, you're going to let people know how much you know, you know? So imagine being the creator of all things. Talk about low key. Jesus was low key. I mean, we're talking, he is under the radar. Like he could have access to everything and use so little of it because he had something to do. And for me, I mean, I'm so prone to open my mouth and to say something, so prone to want the cameras to keep following me. And my king's just different. And I want to be different.
And that goes into like true confidence too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember one of my high school teachers, he was one of the most quietest people you've ever met in your life. The dude was stoic. He was quiet. He was extremely peaceful. Ended up finding out, and I'm like, I used to think in my mind, I'm like, this dude is okay with being so quiet, right? Ended up finding out like a year later that he was a professional MMA fighter before that.
You're lying.
No, serious, right? And he had retired and he wanted to go to teach history. And I'm like, oh, that's why he's so quiet. Because he knows he could destroy anybody if he wanted to. Like, you know what I mean?
Nothing to prove.
The dude has trophies. He's got nothing to prove. Walks in a room. He's stoic, right? And I think that's when you know you're confident, when you don't need to open your mouth every second. You know what I mean? And because I mean, let's just be honest. I deal with that. I'm a talker. I love to talk. But I think true confidence is often quiet, and it's meek and it's humble, you know? And yeah. So.
Whoa. Okay. So one of our listeners actually asked a question relating to confidence, and they said, how do I be humble before the Lord without being self-critical? / what does it look like to be confident and humble at the same time? Like, I think like a lot of people struggle with that. I struggle with that. People give me compliments and I'm like, thanks. And I'm like trying to like, I don't know how to respond. Like it's a serious problem, I think, that our generation has.
How do you respond?
It depends.
What should you respond?
Oh, what should I respond?
Mm-hmm. Someone gives you a compliment. What's a good thing to do?
I think it is okay to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But why does it feel so awkward? I don't know. Do you know?
Pastor Mike?
Reverend João?
Reference. Wait a second.
So wait, say the question one more time.
Oh, man.
Is it wrong to play Fortnite at 1:00 in the morning?
No.
Okay.
No.
So
that is absolutely not wrong. You can play Fortnite till whatever time you want.
There you go.
Anytime you want. Eat Cheetos while you do it.
There you go.
I think that's a sin. So the question.
By the way, I love saying thank you though. So I believe thanks is an expression of gratitude, and it's an expression of humility. So in Spanish, you'd say gracias, which means gracias, grace. You know, so when you're saying thanks, you're saying graces. I recognize this as grace. I recognize this as a gift. And when you take things as a gift, it's sort of like when someone buys you dinner, you know, the difference between them taking the tab and just being like, yo, bro, thanks. Thank you. And saying, oh, I got you next time. Like, I refuse a gift. I will not take a gift. This is going to be somehow quid pro quo. It's going to be, you're going to get something back, as opposed to just being like, thank you. Wow. Thank you. Like if I give João a gift, if I give you a gift, I think it's very appropriate to be like, thank you. Hey, that was great. You did a great job. Thank you. Like that's a gift. What you did was a gift. I think God's kingdom was meant to be a kingdom of gifts. And we operate so well with gifts. And as soon as you turn everything into wages, and as soon as it all turns into transactions, like you gave me something, I'm giving you a transaction back. I'm giving you a little emotional paycheck for the service that you've provided. I think God's intention was always that we would not be entitled little punks that walk around, but instead we're like children that recognize gifts that we have. So like the best marriages I've seen are when the husband's giving the wife gifts and the wife is giving the husband. Like it's not entitled. It's not like I expect this. I demand, because then you're always disappointed. Then you're always being let down because I expected this and you gave me less. It's not that you want to just be at a place where you expect nothing. It's not that. It's that you recognize that what you have has been given. Like today is a day. This is the day that the Lord made. It's a gift. I'm like, Lord, thank you. Like, thank you for this day. Thank you for relationships. Thank you. When relationships are loaded with gifts, there is so much gracias. There's so much thanks. There's so much gratitude. I think that's humility. I think without lacking humility, you have to have, give me mine. I'm entitled to mine, whatever that is. That's what kills relationships. That's what kills roommates. That's what kills churches. That's what kills friend groups. And there's just no gracia.
So a lack of gratitude kills.
I think the root of it, I think lack of gratitude, I think that's the surface idol, if you want to call it like that. I think the root idol is it's a lack of humility. You know, when someone is humble, when you're humble, you see grace everywhere. And when you see gifts everywhere.
Oh, that's good. Whoa. So how do we not fall into the self-deprecation side of it?
So yesterday, like, so you go to our micro church, and so if anyone's watching, what's a micro church? It's kind of like, I don't know if you know of a small group, just like a gathering of people that meet throughout the week.
It's a church.
It's a church.
It's a church.
Yeah.
In heaven's eyes, it's a church.
They don't like the word. Yeah, we don't like the. Yeah, but if you're watching, you kind of like understand that context. But we were in, and we were talking about gifts that God gives people.
Yeah.
So 1 Corinthians 12, right? Some people have the gift of faith, the gift of healing, the gift of miracles, the gift of wisdom, the gift of miracles, all that stuff. And so we were talking about that, right? It's like, we call it humility to not talk about the gifts.
I love when people do this. I like that so much.
If you guys are
Can we just
not
do this
watching
15 more times? I just want a lot of these. All right, there we go. That's good.
If you guys are not watching, he's doing air quotes.
I'm doing air quotes. That's what he says he likes.
Correct.
Do you actually like it though? Do you do that?
I really do. No, I love overusing air quotes.
I've seen that a couple of times.
Especially when a conversation is needs a little injection of something. I love doing that, and someone's mind starts to, anyway.
You're a good communicator. Does that help?
Do you do that during your sermon?
I
think at times. I also like, there's different versions of it. You can put your fingers together. There's like one, you keep them straight. You've got little antenna. You can have like a lot of different ways of doing it. Like, anyway, there's.
Wait, hold on a second. Wait, I need that. Wait, we have to stop
this. There
this.
can be double quotes. There can be single quotes. All right.
Okay, hold on a second.
No, don't say. Just keep going.
No. Wait, we can't do this. I'm sorry. So, by the way, I look up to this man a lot, and you've mentored me, poured into me. You're also my boss. So
really,
technically, yeah.
Try being the boss of João. Try that out.
Yeah,
it's another conversation. So I'm going to do this right now, and he told me not to, but we're gonna disregard him asking not to. Dang. But you were preaching once. Do you remember this at a college service? And I think you told people. Did you tell people to put their fingers up, and they did, like a middle finger?
I can't believe you're about to say this.
You were teaching on you did like an illustration.
Oh, the APES.
The APES. So if you're apostle, prophet, evangelist, teacher, shepherd, right? He was preaching us off Ephesians 4, and he put a hand, and you kind of illustrated it. But then you got to the middle finger, and the reason one of the times I fell in love with this man was when did you put your middle finger out? Or did you ask someone? I have a very
good middle finger, so yeah.
So in the middle of his sermon, I think
it's also a way to weed out like very religious people.
Putting your middle finger up in
yeah.
But everyone watching, by the way, he doesn't put his middle finger up during preaching. But I think that's the moment I really like you as a communicator.
My middle finger's up right now.
Your middle finger.
No, it's not.
So let's go back to what you were saying. So we're talking about like people having gifts, right? And I think very so often, like the Bible says it's a gift. You know what I mean? Like obviously a gift has to come from a gift giver. And we could talk about, God as a father who gives gifts to his children and all that stuff. At the end of the day, like if you're a child, you have what you have because your parents gave it to you. You know what I mean? When you're like 8, 9 years old, you're not paying the bills. You're not adding anything. You're literally getting everything from your father and your mother. And I think when you have that sort of confidence is not wrong. It's what your confidence is in, right? It's like when people say, well, do you have faith? Faith means nothing if the object of your faith is nothing. Like your faith only matters if it's in the right thing.
Yeah.
What's your confidence in? Is it in the glory and the fact that he's a father giving you everything? Or is it in yourself? Like you're a self-made man, a self-made woman. No, it's about having confidence in your father. And I think that's where you could distinguish and ask what type of confidence is good. I think it's that,
Oh, that's good.
So
I like your question though, like self-deprecation, is humility putting yourself down? Oh man, I thought I was a 7 out of 10, but in reality, I'm just a 2 out of 10. I thought I was an 8 out of 10 this. I thought I was a 6 out of 10 that, but in reality, is humility pushing your rating lower, pushing your grade lower, pushing your dignity lower, pushing your worth lower? And I just love that thought that humility is not thinking lower. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less.
Regarding that, say that again.
It's not thinking less of yourself. Oh, I'm not an 8, I'm a 2. It's thinking of yourself less. So if I'm in this room right now, I think humility is, I want to love you. I want to love you. I want to love God. I want to love people that we might be speaking to more. And if I'm honest, if we're really honest, there's always the garments that have to come. Oh, I wonder what they're thinking about me, or I wonder how I'm coming across, or I wonder about this. Did I say that right? You have to take those garments off, to use your illustration earlier, and put on put on the towel, you take up the towel of, I am going to think of myself less. So there could be no worse statement usually than, I wonder what everyone's thinking about me, or I don't want you to think that I am like that. That's the problem right there. Like the problem is I'm thinking of myself. And the pride problem, humility is not self-deprecation. It is not putting yourself down. You might be a 10 out of 10 micro church leader. You're a million out of a million singer. When you know it's a gift from God, your eye is on God, your mind is on people. Humility you could be Beyonce and you've got all the skill in the world, but if you know it's all a gift from God and your mind is on him, then you can still be loaded with humility. Some of the most humble people I know are some of the most gifted people I know. There's a guy right now I just saw today, one of the most gifted people I know, and this joker is just humble. I mean, because he's not thinking of himself. Now, if you asked him, he's got confidence. He knows what he is. I mean, the dude's got the skills to pay the bills. He's making it happen in life, but he's not thinking of himself and he's humble. That's the catch.
Oh, that's good. I agree, because John the Baptist, I'm obsessed with John the Baptist right now. Like, I've been reading about him for a few days, and I want to make the argument that John the Baptist knew he was like a mighty man, mighty man, because it says here, it's Matthew 3. The Pharisees had just like pulled up on him, and he did his whole brood of vipers thing, and he says
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Dale Carnegie. That's a good one.
He says to these guys, I indeed baptize you with water unto repentance, but he who is coming after me is mightier than I, whose sandals I am not worthy to carry. He will baptize with the Holy Spirit and fire, his winnowing fan in his hand, and he will thoroughly clean out his threshing floor. And it goes on. But he says he is mightier than I. He just said that he was mighty, but that he who's coming after him is mightier.
That's good.
That's it. That's the point.
That's great.
And
he knew who he was.
Period.
I mean, John the Baptist, cool line, I am not. Like, hey, are you the Messiah? I'm not.
That's it.
I'm not. I'm not him, but the one who's coming after me, he's mightier. But I know the one who is, so there's something great about when you know what you're not. And I think I think a lot of pride is wishing I was something other than what God made me to be. John the Baptist, I think he's just a perfect illustration of this humility embodied, I know who I am. I'm a voice. He says, are you the Messiah? I'm not, but I am a voice. I'm a voice in the wilderness that's saying, get ready for the King. Prepare the way for the Lord. And if the bummer is when people are trying to be the Messiah, when God's made them to be a voice, they miss the wonder of being the greatest voice they could have been. And that's just a bummer.
That's good. That's really good.
I'm a voice.
That's good.
Go be your voice. Go say your thing. Do your thing, And if you'll do that, there's so much joy in that.
Why does Jesus say that out of all men born of women, John the Baptist is the greatest, but he who is least in the kingdom is greater than he?
Yeah, he said he's the greatest man.
I've never
and he says he's the greatest man because of the fact that he made himself the least. Do you remember when his disciples, John the Baptist's disciples, started leaving him to go to Jesus? I mean, let's just be real, okay? Let's just be real. That will take a hit to your pride.
Oh, yeah.
And let's talk real talk, right? In ministry, I've seen this, right? Especially back when I was a youth pastor, there was this one I can think of. I poured into this dude for years. Like, I poured into him for years and years and years and years. And I remember a couple years in, he wanted to be like a youth pastor, so he didn't want to serve anyone anymore. Dude left me high and dry. I remember feeling so hurt. It was the first time that something like this happened to me. And this is actually the passage that inspired me during that time. I'm like, you know what? For the rest of my days, I'm going to pour into people, even though they might not give me anything in return. This is who I'm called to be anyway. And if somehow, obviously, if somehow they leave me for something else, I feel like I did my part with them anyway. And if they don't end up with me, then hey, so be it. Like, it's about Jesus anyway. And I think practically it hurts. It really does hurt. And I think that's one of the reasons Jesus considered them the greatest. Like, okay, go on. Like, I did all these things with you for so long, but go on, just go follow him because he's the master. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know.
It's cool because John never tried to like build his ministry. I was reading. Oh my gosh, he's so cool. Okay, so I was reading, and the scene, this is how the scene is set up. He is in the wilderness. He's literally the voice of one calling in the wilderness, like Isaiah prophesied. And he's just out there, and it says he's crying in the wilderness. I had never looked at it like that. He wasn't just saying, prepare the way for the Lord. He was crying. Like, I can imagine this man like, he's here. He's here. Like, going crazy. Like, this is like the biggest picture of humility. Like, he did not care. But then he was in the wilderness. I don't know why I've never thought about this, but who was out there?
Church growth strategies gone to trash.
Who was out there? There was literally
Lions and tigers and bears.
Oh shit. That's funny. There was nobody. So why was he out there in the wilderness crying that the Messiah is here? Like, nobody hears you, John. I can literally imagine like his family and like his friends like, why don't you go out into the city? Why don't you go to Jerusalem, Judea? Like, you can really make a name for yourself. Like, you have something that nobody else has. Like, nobody else knows he's here, but you do. Why don't you go out into the city and tell people they'll follow you? No, like, that's not my purpose. I am the one crying out in the wilderness. And I can literally just imagine somebody, some bros are out hunting or something one day and they hear this man, Messiah's here. And they're like, what? And they ran out back to the city and told everybody. I've never seen it like this before, but it says in Matthew 3 that after he was crying out in the wilderness, then Jerusalem, all Judea, and all the region around the Jordan went out to him and were baptized by him in the Jordan. He didn't have to go out to anybody. They came to him because he never made it about him. He started off by himself exalting Jesus. That's all it was about. He knew that the people would come because it was prophesied about him. So why do I have to make a name for myself? They'll come. It's all about him anyways. Oh my gosh, John, Lord. But yeah.
A name for myself. Make a name for myself.
You could speak into this though, because you obviously like, you know, you. What year did you become the senior pastor of Greenhouse Church?
2005.
You're what, 31?
Dang, you're
30?
old.
Yeah. Yeah.
You look good for your age, by the way.
There we go.
Let's just applaud for that.
Come on,
He has
somebody.
a great middle finger. He's a great. So obviously, like I've heard stories about you dissuading like staff members from like making like a MikePatz.com or like, you know, because you didn't really want that. You were not really into that. So you could probably speak into this better than anyone in this room.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah, because just from staff around you that have said like you've never been the guy to try to push like a Mike Patz ministry or like, you know, like.
Well, just look around. I mean, if there's not evidence, I mean, how much evidence do we need that God does not need another celebrity to do his thing?
Yeah.
I mean, Lord Jesus, help us. You know, like I'm just saying with all the drama, do we need another documentary? Do we need another celebrity that falls? Do we need another evangelist, pastor, movement, you know, whatever? Do we need another rise and fall of another mega something of all these celebrities? You know, I mean, I met someone the other day. Actually, I met someone last Sunday and they had been watching from afar and they're like, hey, I needed to see how expensive your shoes were. I wanted to know,
What?
Are you wearing Jordans?
This is good.
Are you
Sneakers
wearing,
and preachers?
Are you wearing Jordans? You know, and they're like, and I just realized your shoes, you just buy them like at Walmart or Target. I was like, I don't. No, I don't. And I don't do
It's
that.
like the opposite problem. Like, come on, give me some
I was
points
like,
here. Like you.
No, I get them at
Shoe game? The
I get them
worst.
at Winn-Dixie. You know, so.
He said he got him at one.
No, but it was just so interesting because
no.
this person had been very hurt by the church and they're just like, you know, I'm just kind of done. And then they were just watching from afar. And then they came in person and they're on the lookout, you know? So
I like your shoes today, actually.
No, they're fine. They're fine.
They look good.
Yeah,
They're
You're
nice
ready to preach. Are you
shoes.
ready to
They're
preach?
nice
fine.
shoes.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready to preach.
What are you
Take
wearing,
out your
slides?
word.
Don't look at mine.
He's got some Jordans on.
Those are trailblazers.
$90.
That's nothing.
You know what I mean? You become a celebrity preacher. I think if it's over like $400.
No, I think the point there is though the brands get so like we're doing a website right now. So our church is like re-upping the website. Or
Yeah.
you do this from time to time, and there was a whole page that was going to be dedicated to like the pastor, the first lady, and so they had this whole there was this whole thing. And so when I got my eyes on, because they had put some work into it before it came to me, I'm like, guys, we're not. Like, I don't mind having information on me, just like there'd be information on all the staff anywhere, but we're not having like the Mike Patz prop, whatever that deal is. In a lot of ways we get it. Like, so like the brand is, is it Elevation or is it Stephen Furtick? Is it, is the brand, was the brand Mars Hill back in the day? Or actually there was two Mars Hills. There was Rob Bell and there was Mark Driscoll. Is there, a tale of two Mars Hills that both crashed, who is the brand? What is the brand? Not just trying to be trite or anything. I'm just saying to me at this point, I fear and tremble for anyone that's trying to build any brand other than the name of Jesus. And I think it's just, there's a danger of there's a little celebrity in all of us that wants to put on those clothes and have everybody say, look at me, everyone be able to look at me and see what we are. So,
yeah. Isn't it interesting? Because like, so when I gave my heart to Jesus, I was, we were part of like that whole movement or whatever. And the one thing we looked for was expensive shoes.
Wait, are you serious?
No, I'm serious.
Whoa.
So it was like cool to be in like that environment and like, oh, that preacher could preach. Look at, he's got swag. I mean, he's got all that stuff. And now it's so funny how now 15 years later, we're looking to see if someone has Walmart shoes for trust. Ain't that funny? You see that, right? It's like, we love the glam and the fashion, but now it's like the pendulum has swung to the other side of, I hope he's wearing Walmart shoes. How crazy is that?
What?
You know what I mean? We see that with politics too. It's like there's the pendulum is always swinging from left to right, depending on what's going on, right?
I was at the gym and there was this guy, one of the best looking guys at our church was there at the gym. And the guy is very, very fit and very, very good looking. Okay. So I'm not in any way tempted in that direction.
Kim wants to know.
And yet I was looking at this guy and I was like, bro, like this guy's just such a specimen of the fearful, wonderful creation of God. Okay.
What are we
But at the gym, he's wearing like this very, very baggy clothing and all this stuff. I was like, bro, like what? Like your clothes barely they don't. I'm like, man, what are you doing? He's married, so Kim doesn't need to worry. But I said, what are you doing? And he said, what do you mean? I said, like your clothes, like it's got to be awkward. He says, that's just what I wear. I want to honor God. I said, what do you mean you want to honor God? And by the way, I thought this was very cool to me because I feel like a lot of times females hear, hey, we want you to dress modestly, but men are never told you need to dress modestly. And I was like,
talk about it.
I said, man, you look good, brother. And he's like, yeah, but the only one that needs to be looking at my body is my wife. And I was like, dang, man, look at you. Because let's face it, most people go to the gym so that like one guy the other day, I was doing something. I was at the gym. I was working out. And this guy comes over. He's like, hey, man, we're not here for, I'm not even going to give you his whole statement, but he's like, we're here to get big. We're here for how we look. And I'm like, not me. Like I said, obviously that's not happening. Like that's not like, I don't work out because I'm hoping to become one of these guys that like this guy competes in competitions. I'm there for the sake, I just want energy. So for me, I value energy. Like that's what I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to lift up my children and throw them around and things like that. And his idea was why else would you go to the gym unless you're trying to get big? And if you are getting big, then you want to like get one of those shirts. You ever seen the guys that they cut the shirt like it's just this little tiny.
I hate it.
There's no point in having a shirt at that point. Why are you wearing a shirt?
There's not. But Kim was there and she was lusting after him. And it was an issue. It was a thing, So
I already said sorry.
She said sorry.
I said sorry.
She said sorry.
My point with this guy though was what I loved was his modesty. He knew who he was. And the guy he's a 10 out of 10. Like if you just want to say, the guy's a 10 out of 10. His face is gorgeous. His body is perfect. The guy is strong as all get out. And he's not showing it off for the world to see. Like, he's like, no, this is this is between me and my wife. I exercise because I want to be healthy. But I'm not doing this for the sake. And I think that's the problem, is that the system itself is set up to where there's so much pressure to become this thing that the whole world's looking at, whether it's on social media, or whether it's in our bodies or in the statements that we make or whatever. And it just fights against that humility, fights against that meekness. But I love what you were saying, to have all this authority and to not be using it, to have knowledge that you don't. Meekness is when you're in a micro church and you know the right answer and you let someone else speak first.
That's good, because we get practical with that though. So keep giving more examples, because we
please.
talk about like, oh, Christians are called to be humble, but I think it's so vague that we don't get specific.
I think modesty is humility on display. Like I think modesty and you're modest in your statements when you know a bunch and everyone doesn't find out how much you know. Like you really, in that moment, you know that the goal is not just that you're unloading all that information, or you're unloading all that beauty, or you're unloading all of that, whatever it is. You know, to me, I'm most concerned in our generation right now. I'm most concerned with social media. Like, as far as it has so set us up for how you open this thing up with, we are so consumed with our image and likeness, like name, image, and likeness. It's not just athletes in college. Everyone's competing for their NIL right now, their name, image, and likeness. And
Man,
beware, woe to us.
I want to get into the meekness. So how do we be meek? What are some examples? Because what I've noticed with a lot of the listeners, and just like me in general, I don't even know, like before I looked it up, I didn't even know what meekness was. I don't know how to be meek. And the Bible says, Jesus says, the meek shall inherit the earth, right? That's the right?
Mhm.
Shall?
Yeah.
Or is it will?
Will.
Shall? Will?
Well, I guess if you're reading King James or not.
Shall sounds kind of authoritative.
Shall.
But
they shall inherit the earth.
Mhm.
Why? What is so big about meekness that the promise is you'll inherit the earth?
That's the right question.
So I'm going to take it out from a different standpoint here too. You can either like choose humility, or God could do it for you.
Oh,
You know?
they don't want to know.
I choose.
Right. Like, no, seriously. I mean, I've seen this with my own life. It's like, you can either choose to be humble, and yes, and reap some of his benefits, but more than anything, give God glory. Or I think that if God loves you, sometimes he will allow you to be humbled by life. He will allow you to be humbled by things that happen to you. Now, I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that God will discipline you for like sin. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, well, you can actually. But what I'm saying though,
Yes,
is that,
he will.
Yes, you will. What I'm saying though is that oftentimes God will allow you to lose things, to stop allowing the grip of pride from ruining your life the way it is. You know what I mean? That oftentimes, I mean, I'm a testimony of this. I know exactly what it feels like to feel like I lost everything, but it made me more humble. I don't know if you could say that, right? It made me more humble, but I feel a sense of meekness I do now than I did when I was 25, when I was 26. And I felt like I was on top of the world conquering stuff. And I think that's great. But oftentimes God will remove everything so he could be your everything. And that's a hard message to hear. You see this in Job. I mean, you see this. Look at Moses, 40 years in the desert. I mean, the dude came from an Egyptian palace to a shepherd in the mountains for 40 years. But what happened during that time? You know what I mean? And I think the wilderness season is one of the most powerful things. And I will say, I'm grateful for losing some things I held to be the utmost. And my eyes are now on the utmost God, if that makes sense. And so I'll come in from that point. Let's talk about being humble. Let's talk about God humbling you too.
Those who exalt themselves will be humbled.
You know?
Interesting. Do you guys have examples of like situations where you were meek? Like, because I want the people who are listening to really get this. Like, what does that mean? What is it to be meek?
I don't like the idea of like expressing times when we nailed it, but I will tell you when I've seen people nail it,
Okay.
would be when you could defend yourself and you don't. Like, I think one of the areas that happens when you are, because there are times you are right and someone else is not, or you are more right and someone else is not aware. and you want to make sure that they're aware. I think, like, when I look at Jesus, he just opened not his mouth, like it says. You know, here he is being falsely accused with a horrible mock trial, and Jesus doesn't even open his mouth. Like, could have defended himself, could have called down 10,000. I think that's meekness. You have access to 10,000. There was a legion he could have called to his defense, and he didn't. I think that's meekness. I think there's something about, it would be so easy for you to defend yourself, to make your point right now. I can tell you this, like, what does it look like in a relationship? It looks like you can be right or you can make things right. And when you choose to make things right, often that's going to mean you just suck it up and you shut your mouth as opposed to open your mouth. I think a lot of meekness is that. It's like being still and knowing that he's God. Like, choosing to let him be your defender, not yourself.
That's good.
Interesting. I was at work the other day, and
Where do you work? Or you're not allowed to say?
Maybe if we say that, then I'll get fired.
Maybe the kind of work you do.
So I'm technically, I guess I'm a busser, but I'm about to be a server.
Oh, Your Majesty.
Yes. So I serve, and at this restaurant, and I'm working there because, like, I'm trying to learn the language. It's not an American restaurant. So basically, I didn't know. So a situation happened, and I responded in a certain way that I didn't know what was going on at the moment, why I was responding that way, whatever. And then I started, like, daydreaming about sharing this story on the podcast, and I, like, snapped out of it, and I was like, why do I want to share this story on the podcast? But I showed my mom what happened. She was like, Kim, that's what meekness is. And I'm like, Lord, you let it happen because I was being tested. But anyways, my lovely boss, you know, takes it out on a lot of people for no reason. And to be honest, I wanted to cuss him out. Like, I don't cuss, but, like, I was going to.
What would you have said? What words came to mind?
Would you put the middle finger up?
No, I think that's kind of cringy, actually. The middle finger's kind of cringy. Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll be meek.
So I did, which is crazy to think like that. I don't even get into, like, those situations where I want to do that, but I wanted to. And then, like, walk out and throw my apron and be like, never coming back here again. Find another person. And then I didn't. I just kind of let him say what he was going to say. And he was just asking these redonkulous questions. And I was like, bro, like, but I just let him do his thing. So if you want an example, I feel like exactly what Pastor Mike said. It's kind of that you could say something, but you just shut your mouth.
Well, you could probably bring up what happened to you. I don't know if you feel comfortable. What happened to you on TikTok a couple months ago?
Oh my gosh.
You could probably talk about that too. Maybe this could be your ability to talk back at that, because I don't think you have.
Redressing the haters.
You could. I don't know if you knew what happened. So,
you know, this is the perfect segment to go into what you wanted to talk about earlier. I see what you're doing.
I
see what you're doing.
No, I was genuinely.
Okay, so a few months ago, it was like in October. It was before, like, I started TikTok for real. I just was, like, trying to post some stories. I don't know. And my sister had a crazy experience. She started, like, she saw on TikTok that if you rub your nails together like this, it will make your hair grow. Like, it stimulates circulation or something. And she was like, yay, I want to make my hair grow. So she was doing that for like 2 weeks. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you doing? Come to find out, that is like a form of yoga. And she started doing it. And one night she's having a nightmare where she enters this yoga studio. She didn't know it was yoga at this point. She enters this yoga studio and it's like people are screaming, like it's like crazy and it's hot. She just feels like this presence and she wakes up, snaps out of it. When she wakes up, her bed is bouncing. It's like, doom, doom, doom. And she feels, because ever since she was little, she's seen demons and stuff. And she felt one next to her and her bed is just bouncing, bouncing, bouncing. And she's like under her covers. She's like, God, what's going on? And she heard the Lord say, she's 15. She was 14 at the time. She was like, she heard the Lord say, you've been doing yoga. You opened a door. And she was like, I'm sorry. Everything stops, calms down. And then she runs into my mom's room. She's like, Mom. And so we made a video sharing that experience on TikTok, blew up. It blew up for the good, but then it blew up like tenfold on Hindu TikTok. And everyone is like, death threats, like calling me a monkey, like racist comments, like, and it's still going like to this day. Like there's literally, if I open my phone right now, it's crazy. But I never like responded to any of the comments, and like it would pass through my head like, oh, just delete them. But I was like, no, it's okay. That's it.
You talk about meekness though. It's definitely an example of meekness for sure.
I still want to know if her hair grew.
He wants to know if the hair grew. I do too, actually. Did it grow?
No.
Do you want to take it?
I'm playing. I think that's the right way to do that. I think that's right. That's the hard thing about the world we're in is there are these platforms where we are going to go and live our lives. We're going to live our lives saying things, making statements, and making observations about the world that we're in. And there are people engaging in darkness that they don't know about. They do not realize what they're doing. And when you do, I mean, the reality is you're going to have pushback on anything that if you step out. We had this happen. We just have it happen every week. That happens all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So growing up, my father we grew up Catholic, and I love my Catholic brothers and sisters. I think I got a huge heart for them. I grew up in Portugal, and we grew up Catholic in a little village, So you grew up Catholic. And I remember when we came to the States, they brought this huge shrine with them. It was a huge shrine, and it was Mary, Mother of Jesus. And my mom would actually have these prayers to Mary. And I remember as a teenager, when we gave our life to Jesus, spiritual attacks didn't really happen in my house until we became Christians. And my father, after we had given our hearts to Jesus, the man was choking in the middle of the night, and he was having these dark spiritual experiences. He couldn't sleep, sweating bullets. And this is after we literally bent the knee and said, like, Jesus, you're king. And you had this shrine. And we remember, I think my mom was like, hey, like, maybe we should like do something with the shrine, because it was right next to his bed. And, theologically, I could probably get into it, but this is an anecdote. This is something that we experienced ourselves, our experience. But my mom was like, hey, let's kind of like shatter it and throw it away. And my dad was like, no, but I think it was given to him by his mom. He didn't want to throw it out. This continued, this persisted, choking in the middle of the night. All it took was one day my mom got home, and she got this shrine and just broke it, put it in the garbage. He's never experienced a thing ever again in his life. You know what I mean? And regarding the yoga thing, I just use that to kind of illustrate the big point here. Is it's funny how we live in an atheist society, but everyone wants a spiritual experience. Like, how crazy is that? We live in a post-Christian. People are becoming less and less believers, but everyone still wants a spiritual experience. And you begin to open the door for certain things in your life. And remember, if you're opening up your door, listen, spirits are real. Now, especially in a world where like truth is relative, it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter what spirit. No. There's a demonic and there's a heavenly. What are you opening yourself up to? And I think it's important, especially for TikTok, for people to understand what they're opening up the door. There's a good and there's an evil. And you have to ask yourself, who is that? And what God is that, if that makes sense? So,
are you against all yoga?
Yes. All yoga. I think, wow, just after the experience my sister had, that alone was enough to like make me solidified on that. But yoga in itself is a Hindu practice. Like, it's adoration to Hindu gods. Like, whether it was modernized, brought over here to the States, and now it's like not even the same as what they do over there. But that's the intention, And so if you go in and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, which is Hindu adoration, but I'm going to make it my own and make it Jesus adoration, you're still doing the same thing. You're doing the same poses that are literally named after gods. So yeah, I 100% am against all yoga, all form of adoration to any other gods. And I think that is the point of contention. Like, people are like, what are my motives? Well, if my motives are pure, then like, it's fine. But I don't think that's how the spiritual realm works.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what your motives are. If you open the door, you open the door. Like I could take a crystal right now and say, my motives are pure. And I'm gonna wear this because like to spread love. It's like, or it's a prosperity crystal.
That's what it always comes down to, right? For them, it's like, this is it's about love. It's about spiritual transformation. It's about good, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it like the intention is really good.
Mm.
You can even say, oh, this is for prosperity. The Bible talks about prosperity. It says that he's a God of abundance, a God that will bless his people. I'll open up the floodgates, the windows of heaven for you. Okay, I'm going to wear this crystal to symbolize that, to remind me of that. No, that crystal is a checkpoint for these demons who are going to come now and make your life hell. So, yeah, that's what I think.
He's got some really juicy stuff to say about
I
this.
want to know.
He's being humble right now.
I really want to know.
He's being meek. He's not saying it.
No, what I will say is that I have often struggled in scripture with how often little children are brought to Jesus that have demonic problems. And I'm always like, man, Lord, I don't like the fact that little kids can actually get troubled by, oppressed by demons, demonic forces. And we do not learn this in American Western culture that's very post-enlightenment, naturalistic. Everything has got a scientific explanation. And yet little kids, I hate that. It even bothers me the fact there could be parents that don't have demonic issues in the Bible and their children do. And they come to Jesus. They're like, hey, my kid's got a demonic problem. The point you just hear being, you can open yourself up to spiritual darkness, and we may not like it. We may not think it's right. It doesn't change it. It doesn't change the reality. Like there are laws of the universe. Like gravity is a law, whether everyone believes in it or not. Like it just applies. And there are laws of the spiritual realm in the spiritual world that God tries to warn us about. And I think that's what you're tapping into a little bit is, hey, you could have all the best intentions in the world, but if you open yourself up to things, your enemy doesn't play fair.
No, he don't.
And little kids, it bothers me that little 5-year-olds can have demonic problems, and they can.
Yeah.
And I've seen it and I know it, and scripture, it's all in there. So
you mentioned Daniel 4 and Daniel 5 before. And if no one knows what the story, but basically Daniel was a Hebrew boy, was taken to Babylon during captivity, and his name was changed. Is it Belteshazzar or Belteshazzar? I've never actually. It's Belteshazzar, probably. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't call them by their slave names.
Yeah. So they were given a new name. Yeah, but they can't say it again. But essentially, Babylon changed his name. What? To indoctrinate him. That's what the enemy does, right? He tries to change your name. How do you view yourself? Wow. What do you say about yourself? It's great though that even like Daniel chapter 4, I was just reading it. He became head of the magicians. That's what the CSB says, right? He became head of the magicians. Think about that.
That's weird.
Okay. So he became, because I mean, even the way that they would talk about it was that they would say he had the spirit of the gods to interpret dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I mean, he had the spirit of God, Yahweh, the Hebrew God, and he was able to interpret dreams, right? And so they all wanted a spiritual experience. Think about it. They got all these magicians, they got all these people come interpret these dreams. And that's what we have today. I mean, look at New Age practice, tarot cards, healing crystals. It's the same thing. Dream catchers, right? And I don't want to, I guess be mean, air quotes, be mean towards people's beliefs and whatnot. But here's the thing. I mean, the dude was overhead of magicians. Why? Because he had the spirit of God. My question is always like, well, you don't need tarot cards if you know you have access to the God of the world. Mm-hmm. You don't need healing crystals if you know you have access to Jesus. I mean, Jehovah Rapha, what is that? He is a healer. That's who he is. And so my thing is like, you are settling for a counterfeit when you could just go straightly to the God of the universe. And that's my thing. It's like, you got access to the God of the universe. You do not need these things. And the reason he was able to interpret dreams was because he was close to the Lord. So I would say the real spiritual experience is actually found in Yahweh, in the Lord. So
I think people turn to those things because they're easier.
Yeah.
Like it's really quick fixes. Like you immediately like see something happen. How do Christians tap into that level that Daniel was operating out of, because I know God can do it like this, but I've found that like it's different. Like with the demonic, it's so easy to access. Like you can literally just do drugs and like you're literally teleporting through portals and stuff. Like, but so how do we as Christians access what the Lord has for us? Because like you said, like it's way better on this side. But how? You guys are
this is the expert right here.
Like,
I just wanted to back up because when you're talking about this Daniel's business, I think this is where there is the intersection of humility and meekness and excellence, you know, because I think Daniel was humble and I think he was meek.
Yeah.
But I also think he was excellent, you know, to where the king says, you're going to have to go and do these things. And you don't get the feeling that he's being ridiculous, argumentative, and contentious. He's like, hey, I'm not going to eat the stuff that you want me to eat. I'm not going to compromise on who I am and what I am. I'm going to live a life of high integrity and high convictions, but test me. Go ahead and test me. See if I've got the skills to pay the bills. See if I've got the fruit that comes out of this. And that's where the excellence, I think, comes in, which is humility and meekness. They end up becoming justified when there's an excellence that's there to support that.
That's good.
wait, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think sometimes the concern is, man, if I go the Lord's route, which would be route, you know, when ruta, you know, when
I like route.
Depends where you live in the United States.
When I go the Lord's route, I'm going to have a humility and there's going to be a meekness, which means I'm not going to be overbearing. So I think about people like a guy named Tony Dungy was the head coach of the Bucks. So I grew up in St. Pete. And so the Bucks were always terrible. They were always so bad. And the laughing stock of the NFL. Tony Dungy was the coach, and he brought us to respectability, this close to winning the Super Bowl, I think, you know? And it was just a real bummer. But the narrative was he's just too much of a nice guy, you know, like he's too meek. He will not cuss the players out. So they fired him and they hired John Gruden. John Gruden comes in
John Gruden,
and John Gruden wins the Super Bowl. I believe it was the very next year with all of the foundations that Tony Dungy built. And the idea was, this is what it takes. This is what it's going to take. Well, you know, since then, of course, John Gruden's come out, you know, all sorts of bummer emails that were discovered and whatnot in John Gruden's life. Tony Dungy goes and gets hired as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And the beautiful thing about Tony Dungy is he ends up going on to have one of these great, you know, quasi dynasties of sorts with the Colts. And they do end up ultimately going and winning the Super Bowl. And when you're looking at who's inheriting the earth right now, if you were to say, and again, this is looking over a 25-year window right now, is it John Gruden, who's had all this, and like racist stuff that came out? I'm not saying he is a racist. I'm just saying there was many, many emails that definitely had leanings and underpinnings, if I'm getting the story right. Or you've got a Tony Dungy who seemed like the meek guy that was building something slowly and doing something kindly and was known for his justice and humility and meekness. Tony Dungy is this monster advocate for like adopted children.
Yes.
One of the years when they just barely missed the Super Bowl is when he took, right when they were about to play the big nemesis that they were going to play, someone begged him to come and do a public service announcement for adoption. And he did it. Like, I mean, you're as busy as can be. And he goes and takes hours away, drives across town, goes and makes a public service announcement. And they end up losing the whole thing, you know, but they did not win the whole thing. And so it was just a little bit like, man, if you would have just been a little more cutthroat, a little less into all your nonprofits and all this stuff. But he ended up, when I heard him telling the story, he was telling how this woman came up to him and said, you know, my husband and I heard you give your story, and we heard that about go do adoption. And then she pointed, she's like, here's my son. Like, here's this boy that never threw a football with a father. He never had an ice cream cone with his dad or his mom. And he realized, like, you know, I didn't win the Super Bowl, but I won the Super Bowl. Like, what does it mean to inherit the earth? You know, and he's like, that's inheriting the earth, you know, to where God only knows how many ripples, how many ripple effects there were. And he ends up going to another place where the ownership allowed him the time to build what he was going to go build. And the meek man inherited he literally won the Super Bowl. And here it is now. He's got a Super Bowl, and there's countless people's lives that have been changed and altered by adoption. He's been a massive advocate of the pro-life movement, all these things. And that joker is just inheriting the earth. Like, so I'm saying in the long run, I think sometimes the anti-meekness feels like in the short run, we would call it, this is where I'm tying it together with excellence. I think we've oftentimes called something excellence when what it really was shallow, superficial, quick results. But in reality, excellence is where you're going to find fruitfulness that has ripples for generations. And that when you look back, because do you want to be someone that you look back when history looks back on you, you're like, bro, what were you doing? Sis, what were you doing? Excellence, I think what we're going to find when Tony Dungy's all said and done, not only did he win a Super Bowl like the guy that he was fired to and replaced by this other guy, he got the same trophy that guy got, but he's also getting all these other trophies that how do you put your finger on what that kind of excellence is? I think meekness gives you long-term permanent excellence. I think anti-meekness and pride will give you short-term results, quick followers, celebrity culture churches, celebrity culture, everything.
That fall quick.
But it's a house of cards.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is house of cards. That's a great analogy. But I mean, the same way you're contrasting those two coaches, though, look at King Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, for example.
Yeah.
All the power, all the stature. Remember, he even had the dream about all his fruit. And here he goes, everything is collapsed until he would humble himself to the Lord.
Yeah.
And then you have this guy, Daniel, who was stolen from his community of people, who chose not to defile himself at the king's table. And now we're reading about him thousands of years later as a hero. Talk about inheriting the earth.
Wow.
At the end of, he serves under 3 different kings.
Yeah. Yeah.
God advances him every time. On that last one, he's like, hey, I'll give you all this rich. He said, hey man, keep your riches for yourself. He's like, I'm so unimpressed with you. Like, do you have any clue? Imagine you're like in the United States during the, Civil War period or whatever. And they've got, I'll give you a bunch of Confederate money. Daniel's like, bro,
means nothing.
Your Confederate money's going down.
Yeah.
that stuff's going down. Give me the US dollar, because that thing's not going to remain. And that's what I think he sees. And that's where his excellence and his meekness comes together, because he's so God-minded.
It's like, why am I gonna pop in like a microwave lasagna when I could get mom to make me lasagna from home? For sure. It's like, I've sat at the king's table. I know it's good. I don't need what you got to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And they still give it to him.
And I think that's what confidence is too. When you talk about meekness, you got something from the king. You got something from heaven. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, why am I going to fall for what you have from me? I got something way better than you could ever offer me. And this goes into relationships. It goes into anything. It's like, why am I going to sleep around when I know the love of Jesus already? It's like, what you possess. Therefore, you don't got to cast your pearls to pigs. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So how do we walk in excellence, right? But also, how do we walk in excellence without falling into perfectionism? That was one of the viewers. My girl, Annabelle.
Annabelle. Do I know Annabelle?
Mm-mm.
Hello, Annabelle. Shout out. Which, by the way, I was in the pickleball court the other day. Believe it or not, I don't play pickleball often, but when I was playing, someone was like, "Oh, you were on Kim's podcast. How cool is that? People know you."
That's funny.
Annabelle.
I feel like I know someone famous.
Pastor Mike, you're one to talk.
Oh my gosh.
I want to make sure that it actually is. I'm pulling up the questions before y'all.
I think perfectionism is a real problem. And I think you can have something perfect and it's not excellent, especially words matter. What is perfection?
Mm-hmm.
So not to just be, constantly thumping the Bible here, but in one book of the New Testament, one of the Gospels, we hear where Jesus says, be perfect as God is perfect. Be perfect as I'm perfect is this idea. In another gospel, there's a different word that gets used. It's be merciful as I am merciful. It'd be as God is merciful. So like, what is the perfect? Because there's scriptures. Like there actually is a scripture that says be perfect. But the question is, what does God mean by that was perfect? What God means is merciful and compassionate and kind and meek and Godward and people loving. And that is what I think that's what perfect means at some level there. When it comes to me and like my children, let's say, when I'm like, oh man, when I say, oh, that was perfect. By perfect, I don't mean without flaw. I usually mean the heart is kind and the heart is compassionate. And I see you making progress. So for me, I'm thinking, perfectionism is bad when it's being measured against some false thing that's the wrong scoreboard. You know, God's scoreboard is love and joy and peace and kindness and compassion and mercy and grace, not how many followers showed up or how perfect were your words. Did you say too many times? Were you inarticulate, as opposed to, man, my heart was kind, you know, like that's the perfection I think God's looking for. A God-centered, human, loving, compassionate, merciful, truth-oriented, and like, to use your words, of like signs signs that are pointing to him, that when someone hears it gets them thirsty for living water.
I think that takes a lot of weight off too. Even when you just said that, like my heart kind of just like eased, because like I get really tense when I'm like recording episodes and stuff. And it's like, it's not really about that. Like I'm like, oh, I stutter sometimes and I'm like, but it's so relieving. I feel like a lot of people, like, you need to hear that. Like, you don't have to be perfect. It's just about like what Pastor Mike said. It's
I can't make myself perfect. I can be compassionate today though. I can care more about you than myself right now. Like, I can do that. Perfectionism, the reason it's tied to pride, I think a lot of times, and anti-humility is it's thinking of myself. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less.
Less, that's good.
So if that's what's going to happen, then the issue is not perfection. The issue is, was I present with you right now? Like, am I loving you well? Am I loving João well? Am I loving people that might listen to this well? And that's do I respond or not respond? Back to the meekness question. I don't know. Like, can I respond in a way that's going to love you well? If I'm not sure, then keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet. I might have a perfect answer, but if I'm not clear on how that's going to, I think running it through that, does this pass the love, compassion, kindness, mercy test? That's going to be a really good path, I think, to humility and meekness and excellence, to be honest.
Yeah. You know, Isaiah Thomas, one of my favorite point guards in basketball, like watching basketball. I'm talking about the old Isaiah Thomas. He said something as a kid, and it was such a simple statement. He was like, every time I went on that court, I left it on that court. Now, if you guys have ever watched 90s basketball, them dudes were physical. I mean, they left it all on there. Don't get me wrong. I love basketball today, but that really impacted me because it's like, okay, he might have not gotten certain results, you know, but he's going to close his eyes one day.
He won a championship.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, he also lost a couple. I'm just saying, like,
he lost a lot.
You know, but here's the point. Like, he's going to close his eyes one day. And that statement of like, I left it all on the court. Like, here's the thing. I think the one thing that's going to give someone joy is that you were a really good steward. And that you like really gave it all. Something being perfect might not give you that much joy. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know I was faithful with what God gave me. And I'm going to go to bed at night and I'm going to rest. And it might not be perfect, because sometimes perfect is a standard of like just comparison. Really, let's just be real. Like, a lot of times,
João, you got to say it again.
Like, you know, like a lot of times, like when you talk about being perfect, you're really just comparing your life to someone you just saw on IG.
Dang.
That's the standard. You don't really, I mean, can we really talk about what we actually think is perfectionism?
What do we think?
You know what I mean? And you're right. You talk about a standard of perfectionism. I think the real question is like, hey, have you just given it all to the Lord today? Like, did you really, you're right. Did you try to love as much as you can? Did you do with what you can? And guess what? And that's why Sabbathing is so powerful. What are you doing? You're shutting everything off and you're saying, God is perfect. Like, I could shut everything off. I don't have to try to live by the standard of perfection, and I'm just going to rest. I think a manifestation of wanting to be perfect, you don't rest. And I think that's one way you know you're trying to be perfect all the time, right? So I've learned that, and I struggle with this. Let's just be real. The cat right out of the bag. I want things to be perfect. But if we could be honest, a lot of times you want perfect because you want to compare it to someone you think is perfect. Your standard of perfection is just really you comparing yourself to someone you think is perfect. That's literally your standard. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Oh, wow. I love that. Question answered. Also, it wasn't Annabelle who asked, it was Jess. Whoops.
Jess is going to be mad at you.
Yeah, she will. I'll get it later. Okay.
I got you.
Do you?
ASMR. Do you know what ASMR is?
If you don't know, I feel like you would be the one to know, Pastor Mike. Oh, wow. You know, that's all I got. I think that is all I got. Actually, I had one more question. You know, in 3 John, that guy named Diotrephes? How do you pronounce his name? I don't know.
Do you believe in a literal hell?
No.
Do you believe in a literal heaven?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm kidding.
About heaven? You don't think there's a heaven? Oh, interesting. Okay. Do you think hell has a geographical location in the universe?
Okay, that right there, I can't answer you. I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe the core of the earth. So what's up with this dude? Diotrephes.
Diotrephes.
Is that how you say
I think it's Diotrephes.
What's the verse? Read the verse.
So it says, this is 3 John, it said, I wrote something to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have first place among them, does not receive our authority. This is why, if I come, I will remind him of the works he is doing, slandering us with malicious words. And he is not satisfied with that. He not only refuses to welcome fellow believers, but he even stops those who want to do so and expels them from the church. This guy is like a modern day Ruslan. No, not Diotrephes. Like the book of John is being written like a modern day like Ruslan. Like he's like talking like church gossip. He's like, but Diotrephes is among you. Imagine. Hold on a second. Imagine a book in the Bible written targeting you. Like
it's literally just him.
It's like it's all the juicy news out there.
No, I asked because in what version is this?
This is the CSB.
CSB. Okay. In other versions, it's like he's like exalting himself in the church. I was just curious. What's up with him?
I think so. When you read scripture, your lens of how you read scripture is super, super important. I think you say this all the time. Like we always want to make ourselves the hero in the story constantly. And so when we read the Bible, we look at who's the hero, who's not the hero. Okay, we're going to be the hero in the story. But if you read it correctly, like if we're being honest, all of us have been Diotrephes. Like all of us have exalted ourselves. All of us, even in our thinking, have slandered someone with malicious words. All of us have wanted to satisfy ourselves. All of us have refused to welcome fellow believers in some shape or way. Does it make sense? I think it's important to look at this and say, Holy Spirit, I do not want to be like that. I think it's just a reminder for us. Make me more loving, make me more hospitable towards believers. And so I would say that.
Okay.
That's just my take.
Yeah. I think he was like the hot shot of the church. He wanted to be the hot shot of the church.
At some level, he probably was. I think it's a great point.
How'd that happen?
Will they hear you if he's sitting back like that?
Well, I know we're still doing podcasts right now, but
We are.
what I would say to you is this. I think this is a very cool line of thought that you're bringing up though, which is someone that in his moment, for his little 5 minutes of fame, thought he was the man. And 2,000 years later, he's a byword.
He's a what?
A byword. He's just like
Diotrephes.
There's nothing about any of us that are like, bro.
Don't name your child Diotrephes.
Don't. No one's wanting to be with him. If you just won the Super Bowl and you are the guy I named earlier, you are on top of the world. He might have had his moment of being on top of the world, but history has a way, and ultimately eternity is going to have the ultimate say on all things. I mean, even history itself won't be able to fully nail it all, but there is a day that's coming when it's all going to come out. It's going to be clear as crystal.
Don't be Diotrephes.
Don't be Diotrephes. Okay. That's all I got. You know, we've been doing this for like an hour and 10 minutes.
God bless everybody.
Any last words?
Any hot takes?
Oh, yes. That's the one. Let's go.
Hot takes?
Hot takes, yeah.
Hot takes.
Hot takes.
Hot takes.
IHOP tastes better at 1 a.m.
I have the worst experience at IHOP.
Really?
I'm going to share. Okay, I have to share because I've never shared
They
this.
agree with my statement, by the way. IHOP tastes better at 1 a.m. than it does at 5 p.m. It's just...
Why would you go to IHOP at 5
To a hungry man.
Because
everything
listen, I
tastes
live
good.
in a community where everything closes at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, okay? Like I'm used to being in New Jersey, New York. I could like go to a restaurant at 3 a.m. and just...
Yeah,
so we
this
go to
place
IHOP.
is
But we
low-key.
love IHOP. And hopefully they could sponsor you because we love them and we love the pancakes.
Yes.
We love it.
So basically, I don't even know if I want to share this. So I used to date this dude. And actually, I don't want to share this.
What's his at?
No.
It's a joke.
No. We had the worst experiences with food, him and I. We went on this date to do a wing challenge, like spicy wing challenge, and it was his idea. This man ended up in the ER.
How old were you?
18.
How old was he?
19. Yeah.
He ended up in the ER
Oh, yeah.
from the wings?
Yeah. He ended up in
That
the
was
ER.
meek.
Would you ever do an episode where you do like a hot one style, where we ask you questions, but you just keep getting hotter? Have you seen those?
And you're doing the ASMR too.
I'm not sure. I do not like super hot wings. Like I have a limit where it's just so unenjoyable.
I think it is enjoyable. I think it's just pride, self-exaltation. It's a joke. It's a joke, guys. You ever like? I don't get it. Like people that eat hot wings like for fun. I love those people, but I don't understand. It's like they're like burning. Your face is about to fall off.
To each his own.
You know what I mean? And you're enjoying it. I think it's pride.
Would you do the one chip challenge? People have died. Actually, I don't think so.
What's a one chip challenge?
What's the big spice? What's the spiciest whatever?
That's the spiciest.
What is it?
It's like a ghost pepper. What is it? Ghost pepper?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a ghost pepper.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to be Diotrephes out here.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it. But that was a good hot take. Do you have a hot take?
He's got a lot of hot
You
takes.
know you have one, Pastor Mike. Come on. We want to know.
Longhorn is better than Texas Roadhouse.
I've never been to either
Longhorn.
or.
You've never been to either one?
Mm-mm.
The greatest Japanese restaurant has shut here in Gainesville. There's a hot take.
What was that?
That was depressing. It's called Sawamura. Oh, I loved that place.
We're about to put Gainesville, Florida on the map.
Yeah. I think so.
We love Gainesville, Florida.
Gainesville, Florida.
Best restaurant in Gainesville, Florida.
Oh, there's a good one.
I love Spurrier's. Shout out to Spurrier's.
Yeah.
My friend used to work at Spurrier's. It's too expensive for us poor people.
You're not poor. Come on.
You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. I told myself I was going to stop saying that.
Tell me 4 numbers.
7,
Pastor
Yeah.
Mike is going to lock
11.
me out of my phone.
2.
Oh, iPhone unavailable for 1 minute. Nuts.
Now you can't be tempted. You can't go on the internet.
Hey. All right, y'all. This has been God Talks. Back at it again. We love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Don't be Diotrephes.
Don't be Diotrephes.
Indeed.
Bye.
Essa tá no céu.